The rate of development in any society can effectively be linked to the level of available power supply for industrialization and household use. In Africa, electricity supply is still a luxury for many, especially in rural communities. That is why ECOWAS is now partnering international agencies to expand access to energy for the growth of the sub-region. Now, this week, our focus is on the ECOWAS renewable energy policy, and I am Charles Alpha, welcoming you to this week's edition of Africa Weekly. The ECOWAS Sustainable Energy Program 2022 has held in Abuja with focus on building the structure for moving the sub-region from resilience to seamless energy transition. That renewable energy policy documents of the Commission was up for assessment at the forum.
ECOWAS Renewable Energy Policy is an integral component of the ECOWAS Agenda 2030 on energy transition, which seeks to partly fulfill the regional commitment to climate change policy and also expand the energy mix to increase more access to clean and affordable energy for the region's vast rural population. The forum, being attended by experts from ECOWAS member states, will evaluate all the available options, with particular focus on how to increase investment in renewable energy and link private sector players in the sub-region with international funds operators to boost the sector. For Nigeria, the ECOWAS Renewable Energy Policy, expected to come on stream early next year, is coming at a time the country is fast-tracking its energy transition plan to tackle energy poverty.
While Nigeria led the charge in becoming the first African country to develop such a detailed energy transition plan, we know the captured ambitions are not unique to us. Though our contribution as a continent to global emission is insignificant, it is clear that we remain committed to limiting emissions even as we develop, for example, by increasing the share of renewable energy in our energy supply mix.
To date, only half of ECOWAS citizens have access to modern energy service. Hence, they are constantly deprived of the full benefit of electricity for socio-economic development.
The two-day forum will also examine the implementation status of the National Energy Efficiency Action Plans in the building and industry sectors in ECOWAS member states.
Joining me now in the studio is a former president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, Dr. Segun Adaju. Doctor, we're pleased to have you on Africa Weekly.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, thank you. Now, to begin with, can you give us your perspective on the challenges of energy supply in Africa and in Nigeria?
Thank you so much. So Africa, experiences huge energy deficits. If you compare Africa to other continents, and we look at some numbers, for example, the average energy that an African has per kilowatt hour is below 500, okay? Compared to some countries that can have as high as 13,000 kilowatt hour in developed economies. So there's huge energy deficits in Africa, despite the resources that we have to generate power to power ourselves. If you bring this down also into Nigeria, Nigeria is even worse in terms of numbers. So an average Nigerian has about 175 kilowatt hour, of energy use per day. Meanwhile, in South Africa is about 3,700. I think Egypt and the North African countries are doing averagely about 1,000 kilowatt hour. So when you also look at Nigeria, we're even worse off compared to other African countries. So it's a big challenge really, because without energy, there is no development, and no wonder Nigeria is seen as probably the poverty capital of the world, where you have the highest number of poor people, which is just not unacceptable. If you bring this close to the resources that are available to generate power in Africa and Nigeria, then you know that we have a lot of work to do and we have a lot of resources to achieve it.
Okay. So you talk about one of the biggest challenges, and I also want to say that in the era of climate change, emphasis is now shifting towards renewable energy. What is the potential to this sector in terms of economics and meeting the energy needs of the people?
Yes, after the signing of the Paris Agreement by many countries now, Nigeria is also signatory. The issue of climate change is being taken very seriously. And we can see some of the impact of climate change around us. Recently, Nigeria experienced some very massive flooding. I understand in over 30 states of the 36 states that we have. We're seeing changes in temperature. We're seeing weather condition, unpredictable any longer. Yeah, climate change. And of course, this is also due in part to the way we generate and consume energy. So you see several people using generators, diesel generators, to pollute the environment and the rest. So it is of critical importance at this point that we begin to look at cleaner ways of generating power. And of course, renewable energy technologies and resources comes to play. For example, Nigeria has excessive solar irradiation that can power all of us, and also sub-Saharan Africa anyway. Okay, so from solar to wind, for example, in Kenya, there's a lake called Lake Turkana that has over 360 megawatts of wind farms. So, generating energy for the people of Kenya. We have even small hydro, resources that we can convert in rural communities, in riverine areas, and also even large hydros. Nigeria has, 20% of the energy we generate in Nigeria is from hydro. And there are also bigger facilities that we can still generate energy from in Nigeria using hydro. Then there's what we call biomass, waste from agricultural harvest, waste. For example, in Lagos should be generating over 15,000 metric tons per day, I think so, of waste every day. And these are resources that, if effectively utilized, you can convert them to energy using renewable energy technology. So yeah, it is imperative that we begin to move towards renewable energy technologies. It is, for me, my experience shows that it's more reliable, it's more consistent, it's available, it's renewable, unlike our fuel that will end up being exhausted at some point in time. I hope we all know. Nigeria's oil will, less than 40 years, will be fully exhausted. Right. So there are resources that are, are naturally replenished, that are renewable energy technologies.
Okay, the ECOWAS and Partners Forum on Energy Sustainability in Nigeria, of course, ended just recently. And what is your assessment of this forum?
Okay, so the ECEF is called the ECEF. I think this is the 7th or 8th one, I forgot it now. ECEF 2022, held in Abuja. I've had the privilege of attending at least 4 ECEF. That's ECOWAS Sustainable Energy Forum. It's a forum that helps to showcase what West Africa is doing, what the opportunities that exist in about 15 countries, what are the business models, what are the technologies that are being deployed, who are the stakeholders, who are the businessmen, what's government doing in terms of policy framework. So regularly, West African countries under the ECOWAS, facilitated by an organization called ECOWAS Renewable Energy Center in Cape Verde. Okay, so the recently concluded one in Abuja was seen and also adjudged to be the best ever, even by ECRI itself. So it's a plus for Nigeria that we're able to host that event. And it brought together several players in the sector across Africa, across West Africa, talking about what everyone is doing, the opportunities, the financing framework, how energy is being generated, and also looking forward to what is possible in the nearest years, both medium term and long term. So it was a very successful event.
Right.
We also give kudos to particularly the Honorable Minister of Power, who was there all through to represent Nigeria very effectively. So it was a good event.
Okay, now, Doctor, your organization, Consistent Energy Limited, is not all you have, explained from, the challenges, the opportunities that are abound. Your organization, this is not new to you and your organization. So it makes me want to ask, what impact or what are you doing, in this regard, in the energy mix, and also meeting the needs of Nigerians?
Okay, thank you so much. I was in banking some few years back, and I stumbled on a challenge that is faced by SMEs because I was involved in financing SMEs. And what was the challenge? We realized that most SMEs in Nigeria spend almost half of their income just to power themselves, using generators, basically. And of course, when you have a generator, you have to be buying fuel constantly, almost every day. So I left banking, I became a consultant in this space, and I saw the huge opportunity. So in 2016, myself and a few former bankers like me decided, look, let's get into this space and let's begin to solve the problem of SMEs. So we developed a solution and a business model whereby we power small businesses, pharmacy, restaurants, even barber shops and hairstylists with solar. Displacing those generators that they use. We did analysis and found out that most averagely, barbers, for example, spend about 7,000 to 10,000 naira every week just to buy fuel for their generators. So we came up with a solution that will remove that generator and replace with solar, and then they are paying 5,000 every week. So it became a business model. Today we've done over 5,000, installations. Beneficiaries. We allow them to pay over time, so it's affordable. By analysis, we have reduced the use of about 600 liters of fuel, every year from an average barber, for example. Okay, so this is what we have been doing, and we're working on scaling. And remember, Nigeria has over 40 million SMEs, most of them using generators. So just imagine if we're able to displace all those generators, then we're working towards a cleaner environment. We're helping, to reduce, greenhouse gas emission, which causes climate change. And then, above all, we are helping those SMEs to increase their income, because their income, for the ones that we have done, their revenue and income has increased by about 40%.
Okay, so now before I let you go, now at the level of Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, how are they doing in terms of advocacy and impact? Okay, so yeah, I'm the immediate past president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. Thanks for your mentioning that. All right. And I was there for 6 years. So when we started, when I got into the sector also, we realized that there's no body like Nigerian Bar Association, Nigerian Union of Journalists, and the rest. We saw the power they had, and we said, hey, let us also have our own association so that we can help the sector. So we started in November 2016. I remember about 20 companies came together to start the organization. Today we have over 200 members. We promote a lot of advocacy. We are showcasing what we do. We are telling Nigerians that, look, renewable energy is the way to go. So we do case studies, we do roadshows, we do conferences, just to promote and advocate for renewable energy. Okay. Then also, many of us who have done great things. For example, I've mentioned what I've been doing in the SME space. We have some of our members who are already manufacturing solar panels in Nigeria. We have the ones that are also doing solar street lighting also in Nigeria. We have one who is also manufacturing inverters now. We have several installations that have been done all over Nigeria. Banks are being powered now. Some banks are adopting solar for their branches. Telecom cell sites are going solar. And then other technologies are also being promoted.
So there's a mini grid that is powered by biomass at the outskirts of Abuja. And there are small hydro projects coming up all over Nigeria.
All right.
So our association comes together to promote what's possible under this, and we advocate for the adoption of renewable energy technologies. Okay,
now listening to you, they're talking about the number of people or agencies, organizations, keen into the renewable energy, kind of initiative. It's quite, encouraging. But if you begin to look at, the generality, of the people, Nigeria as a whole, if you look at the renewable energy sector, for instance, so where do you foresee, or what are your forecasts, for this sector in the next 10 years?
Thank you so much. Let me start with my own 10-year vision for my own company. So in 10 years' time, my plan is to displace 1 million generators. Particularly, they are better past my neighbor, 1 million out of it, and replace with solar. Now, Nigeria has the biggest market for this business in Africa and probably anywhere in the world. And I'm seeing, the fast adoption of renewable energy technologies. I've mentioned banks going renewables, even filling stations now are adopting solar to power their pumps, right? So I see in 10 years' time a situation where, currently Nigeria is on the average about 5,000 megawatts from the grid. I see in 10 years' time where we're going to be doing like 50,000 megawatts, for example. And minimum of 40% of this will come from renewable energy technologies. We're seeing a lot of mini grids coming up in rural communities. So communities that have never experienced power before are now going renewables using solar mini grids to generate power and also for productive use. So in conclusion, I see what we are able to achieve in the telecom space over this period. I see it being replicated in the energy space. So a lot of Nigerians never had telephones, not even landlines that we used, in those days. But today we have over 120 million Nigerians that have mobile telephones. All right. So this is what I expect to see in 10 years, maybe by year 2030 or by year 2060, that Nigeria plans to achieve net zero.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Shego, an energy expert there bearing his mind on renewable energy's development in Nigeria. Thank you so much for finding time to be on Africa Weekly.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. A pleasure.
All right, so we'll now take a quick break. African trade union leaders want labor laws to be fully considered in negotiation and implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement to protect rights of workers and domestic production. The union leaders took this position at the African Sub-Regional Workshop on Trade Unions and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement held in Abuja, Nigeria.
The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement targets creating free flow of goods and services across 55 countries of the African Union, though projected to expand Africa's economy to $29 trillion United States dollars by 2050. African trade union leaders are calling for caution, as over-liberalization may prompt disregard to labor laws, give greater advantage to larger companies to demarket smaller businesses.
To avoid the mistakes and landmines we found in other free trade agreements, where the powerful and developed economies seek to use free trade agreements to perpetuate unequal economic relations.
And also, most importantly, place the decent work agenda at the center of this engagement.
We need to strive to increase our intra-regional trade beyond the standard of 14 to 15% by creating resilient value chains.
Union leaders are advocating trade union engagement on African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement negotiation and implementation strategies to ensure that labor laws are upheld.
And now Nigeria is hosting Security Councils of African Union member states in Abuja to learn and share experiences of peace support operations around the African continent.
For 2 decades, The African continent has been deploying special forces for peace operations on the continent, most of which have recorded remarkable successes, but not without challenges.
We have to look at that very critically, and also to realize that nobody can save the African continent but ourselves.
With 27 peace support operations and Nigeria at the forefront, the Peace and Security Council of the African Union is now reviewing its operations through lessons learned forums like this to reinforce response mechanism to emerging security threats.
The forum presents us the opportunity to deliberate on emerging challenges and address the multitude of questions arising from the deployment and transition of peace support operations, as well as highlight the way forward.
The interest is for us, as the African Union, with our partners, working together to explore all the opportunities to make Africa more secure, more democratic, and of course, more stable.
The changing nature of conflicts on the continent over the last couple of decades give imperative to this discussion and how it can benefit from all of these to enhance its full operationalization and utilization.
African Union member states will at the end of the conference draw up new models that will enhance peace and stability in Africa.
The African Development Bank has indicated its readiness to work with all development partners to scale up the phase 1 of the special agro-industrial processing zones recently launched across Nigeria, as it has committed $210 million for the kickoff of the project.
7 years was a long wait, but today I am delighted that the Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones, SAPZs, have finally become a reality in Nigeria. Congratulations.
The Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones, SAPZ program in Nigeria is the largest in Africa. The SAZPs are new economic zones located in rural areas to be fully supported by infrastructure like power, water, roads, digital infrastructure and logistics that will allow food and agribusiness companies to locate within such zones. This will put them close to farmers in production catchment areas, provide market offtakes for farmers, support processing and value addition, reduce food losses, and allow the emergence of highly competitive food and agricultural value chains.
Several private sector firms, domestic and foreign, have already expressed keen interest in locating in these zones. The states will require competent and experienced private sector developers, facility managers, and operators to complete necessary infrastructure and logistics within their respective special agro-industrial processing zones.
Dr. Adeshina says the SAPZs will help to transform the food and agriculture sector as they will attract private agribusinesses to locate in infrastructure-enabled rural areas. They will also create massive amounts of jobs across agricultural value chains and reduce rural to urban migration, expand the fiscal space, and enhance the emergence of competitive agricultural value chains.
The Bank of Industry is committed to financing companies investing in the zones, including small and medium-sized enterprises, commercial farmers, aggregators, input suppliers, primary processors, large processors, and agribusinesses.
For the AFDB boss, to fully unlock the potential of Nigeria's agriculture, more needs to be done to promote and support the agribusiness sector.
And that's our package this week on Africa Weekly. Many thanks for being part of it. I am Charles Alpha. Thanks for watching. Africa.